State Department is getting a big facelift. The Free Press obtained documents detailing the aggressive shakeup, poised to close 132 agency offices, including those that promote human rights, democracy abroad, and tackling extremism and war crimes.
So rumors that an overhaul of the department was imminent have been weeks in the making. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is fully on board, telling the Free Press in a statement that the department is currently bloated, bureaucratic, and impedes diplomacy.
Joining us now to dive in is Gabe Kaminsky, who first reported the story. Welcome, Gabe, to Rising.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you with us. So let's look at these plans in more detail. There's obviously a mandate or a will from Elon Musk and others in the administration to bloat, to rein in our massive federal bureaucracy. I'm certainly, cards on the table, enthusiastic about that mission. What is happening in state?
Yeah, so as we reported at the Free Press, the Department of State under Marco Rubio is beginning to implement what it believes is the most significant shakeup in decades at the department. They are cutting over 130 offices domestically in the United States that focus on things like human rights or were launched to further human rights or advance democracy overseas. They are also instructing top undersecretary officials, these are top 6 major offices at the Department of State, to reduce their workforce by 15% and craft plans to do that in the next 30 days. They are also transferring over 130 offices to other bureaus within the State Department. In the telling of the Department of State and Republicans, this is an effort to consolidate various areas that they believe to centralize the department because they believe that there's a lot of overlap in these areas. They're not saying they don't believe in let's say, one office being gutted is related to countering extremism. They're not saying we want to do away with that. They're saying we want to move that into different bureaus. But Democrats have a different point of view.
And obviously forward-facing, Gabe, Marco Rubio is saying that he's fully on board with Trump's plan, but we've heard reports of some infighting at the State Department about with Trump loyalists and traditional conservatives. So is there actually some disarray going on behind the scenes, or is everyone really on board with these same exact cuts?
Look, I can't speak to any sort of infighting, but I just want to point out one other really notable thing of this restructuring. A major discussion point between Congress and the administration has related to USAID, the major humanitarian aid agency. And under this restructuring, USAID, this is really significant, is being moved into bureaus within the State Department. But under the restructuring, Secretary of State Marco Rubio is still retaining the functions as the acting administrator of this foreign aid agency. And what that means is it's demonstrative of the fact that the administration is recognizing that they need congressional approval in order to statutorily gut this agency. So this is going to set up a major fight between Congress. That's the sort of fighting that I think is going to be really important to watch. As far as infighting within the State Department, I'm just not sure. I think that the appointees are very much on board with this. And we even spoke to and are aware of career officials who did believe that there was reorganization at the State Department that could be in order. As far as if they all agree with how they're going to implement it, that'll be remain to be seen.
Marco Rubio was himself, I think, in favor of expanding funding for USAID up until like 2022. I guess the question would be that with him taking a more direct role in overseeing that organization, does that suggest there will be the kind of serious cut? This agency has so much become the poster child for what Elon Musk wants to do. And I know him and Rubio did, or it was reported at least that they clashed. Maybe that was a mischaracterization. Can't believe everything the New York Times says about it. But given that it's coming under his purview, should we even expect cuts?
Well, so USAID, they've already gutted. The Trump administration has canceled, I believe it's more than 80% of USAID's contracts overseas. So that's really significant. And by folding USAID into these bureaus, they are transferring functions of USAID into State Department bureaus. But as far as the real big question is this foreign aid agency, which is a lot of the reorganization, is it going to be statutorily gutted? That really is going to be in Congress. And Democrats, I think their criticism would be that they'd say, okay, sure, they are acknowledging that Congress has the authority, but by gutting its contracts and by firing USAID employees, they're already kind of de facto abolishing USAID. That's kind of the point of view I think the Democrats would take, and Republicans would say we are still acting under our, what we are allowed to do under the law, and it's up to Congress to decide if they're going to gut this agency that we have already basically gutted.
Now, Gabe, is there a timeline for all these cuts to happen? Do we know if this is like immediate future, or if this is a long-term plan?
Yeah, so within 30 days, the top undersecretary officials, these are senior officials of the State Department, are being instructed to produce plans to the State Department that will say how they will reduce workforce by 15%. By July 1, that's the date that the State Department has said that USAID in its telling will be abolished. That's what they've used the word abolished. I think that the nuance there means that the USAID's functions, I believe, are being, at that point, would be fully folded into the State Department. So I think big picture, like this is a big sort of restructuring of a really important, agency in the United States, the largest leading foreign policy agency. And it's really, we're going to continue to look into it. Like, how is this going to play out? Because it's not entirely clear with the relationship, and there's going to be lawsuits, certainly on the USAID front. So it's setting up a big clash that will occur.
In your write-up of this at the Free Press, you mentioned the cuts touching on the State Department's mission to oppose extremism abroad, terrorism. Is that, again, we're talking about what USAID is doing, or is there another aspect of this you can go into more detail on?
So one of the offices being gutted a big part of this overall relates to State Department programs that are known as J programs in their Democracy and Human Rights Department. And under that bureau, there's an office called the Office of Global Criminal Justice. It was launched to partially investigate war crimes. I think in the telling of Republicans, that's an office that sort of has a smaller budget and can be folded into other areas of the State Department that already are aiming to, investigate human rights abuses or atrocities. Another major bureau that is being eliminated is something called the Bureau of Conflict and Stabilization Operations, the CSO. And that's an office that has basically similarly it actually was launched under President Barack Obama to investigate or figure out how to counter what it would define as extremism, and basically it was a response to the rise of ISIS. And I think the State Department's contention is that given ISIS, the winding down of ISIS, elimination of ISIS, and other efforts, they believe that they can, fold countering extremism efforts into other agencies. So a lot of this is really just they're defining it as moving around offices that certainly focus on like human rights or in their telling expanding of democracy, but aiming to consolidate that and sort of centralize programs that they say overlap or are sort of smaller.
Gabe Kaminsky, thank you so much for joining us to discuss. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Gabe.
Thank you.
Next up, if you thought you were off the hook for your student loans, think again. More Rising right after this.